Here with me today is Donald Kaberuka, President of the African Development Bank. Donald, what do you think are the main challenges that Africa faces today?
The global economy, domestic socio-political disturbances related to food and energy prices, and thirdly, infrastructure, in particular energy deficits. These are the three big unknowns in terms of the growth prospects for next year. So, a contrario, if the global economy remains benign, if there are no domestic socio-political eruptions, if we can make progress steadily on this energy area, I'm confident about the prospect for 2011.
Talking of infrastructure, one of the AfDB's core areas of spending, of lending, is infrastructure. Do you think that African countries are acting quickly enough to develop their infrastructure, the poor quality of which in some areas is still a big barrier to economic growth?
I've never seen African countries give so much emphasis to infrastructure as they're doing now. It's almost a revolution. Whether it is new investment, whether it is maintenance, whether it is PPPs, whether it is natural resource contracts for infrastructure, I mean, it is almost a revolution. Now, are we doing it right in terms of the issues you mentioned? There is something else. But I think for me now, I see oil-rich countries, natural resource-rich countries, instead of building white elephants, building dams, repairing railways, doing new roads, dams with independent power producers, doing connectivity. I like what I'm seeing.
And which areas of infrastructure is the AfDB concentrating most on? Is it transport infrastructure?
We are across the range, and the needs vary from country to country, region to region. There are some regions of Africa, for example, Southern Africa, where the road network is very good, but there are challenges of energy. So in South Africa, for example, our portfolio is very rich in energy, both clean and coal, and the power pool in the region. There are other parts of Africa, like Central African region, where it is roads which are challenged. And so when all of those, but if you ask us whether the priorities in terms of our investment would be energy, second, connectivity, third, mass transports, which include rail, water, and then roads, and finally, of course, water supply for some of these large urban areas.
Do you think Africa has fully recovered from the financial crisis?
As I speak with you now, with the exception of North Africa, even that is Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, with the exception of countries in a conflict or out of a conflict right now, the rest of Africa is growing at the rates it had before the financial crisis. Before the financial crisis. So the impact of the financial crisis was quite brutal but deep, but short-lived. And we're unable to resume the growth momentum, with the exception, again, of North Africa, which is going through the J curve of the post-revolution situation, as expected. So we're not out of the woods, we're not delinked from the global economy, we can't. But I think the momentum we had built from 2000 is back, and will remain touchwood.
Events in Côte d'Ivoire earlier this year demonstrated that democracy is still fragile in some parts of Africa. How good do you think governance is on the continent today compared with, say, 10 years ago? And is a lack of good governance in some countries still a big barrier to economic growth?
Oh, absolutely. Institutions, their quality, the leadership, all those rolled into one, are one of the biggest threats to our ability to continue growing our economies. So the answer is yes. But compared to a decade ago, 2 years ago, we have seen a sea change. These are imperfect democracies. There are issues we have to resolve. But I think now there's general acceptance that strong institutions, sound governance and accountability is a basis for economic performance.
What lessons do you think the rest of Africa should learn from the events earlier this year in Egypt, Tunisia, and Cote d'Ivoire?
First of all, let's talk about the people of North Africa themselves and the revolution. And I want to actually reverse the question to you. What should Europeans learn from the events in North Africa? I think the first lesson that you cannot actually export change and governance improvement. The revolution in Tunisia has been carried by the Tunisians themselves without external impetus. In fact, Tunisian friends tell me that some external impetus was not helpful. So I think that's the first lesson, that when the critical mass for change has been attained, there was a case in Tunisia, change will happen. And so I think all of us are learning now that it is important to open up the institutions, to provide inclusive growth, to provide opportunities for the young. Because in this world of Twitter and Facebook and the internet, every person, anyone on planet Earth, knows exactly opportunities open to them. So I think what we need to do now, more than speculating on lessons of others, is ensuring the change in North Africa is a success. Is a success. And I think Europeans have got a huge role here. Because North Africa, after all, is your neighbor. And that effort to ensure that North African transition is a success has many elements, all of which are articulated well in the Deauville Summit, G8 Summit paper. But it's important that those commitments are made so that the transition actually is a success. We are leading the way. We are leading the way. That's not surprising. We're an African institution. $500 million in Tunisia is quite a significant commitment because we believe strongly in the necessity of the success of that transition.